right. Is this on? I think I made it.
I
You're
can certainly
on.
hear you.
We're good. All right. Hello, Alexa friends. Welcome to another edition of Steph Takes Over Jeff's Office Hours. And with friends this time. I'm not alone. I'm so excited. But yeah, I've only been on the stream a couple of times, but I'm Stefania Sharp. I'm a senior solutions architect with the Alexa team. I specifically I've worked with Skills for a very long time, but I also now work with our Alexa smart properties. So that's Alexa in like hotels. If you kind of go and search for Google or whatever engine you choose, Alexa and Legoland, that's some stuff that my team has worked on. So we get to be a bunch of big kids in this space. It's really fun. But I'll let my cohorts introduce themselves, who will be joining me today.
Yeah, my name is Ryan. I think most of you guys have seen my face. So I am a Jeff Jr. in training. I am a new evangelist here learning the ropes of Alexa. So I've been joining more for the witty banter than the deep answers to all your questions, but I'm having a blast ramping up and just happy to help out. So, and finally get to host with Steph, who is awesome from everyone who I've talked to. So
flattering. And we have Andrew as well.
Hi, my name's Andrew. I'm on the Alexa Developer Advocacy group. If you ever needed to write a contact us case about your skill certification or wanted to report some unusual behavior with your skill or in our APIs, you might have spoken to me.
Yes, well, actually, I would love to. I think it's we don't talk about our developer advocacy group enough, so I'd love to actually. I think we can part of this stream kind of probe you a little bit about what the team does. Certainly, they are my counterparts. Can't handle all the skills ourselves, so it's great to have the whole team here. Well, I'm excited. So Jeff is out today. He's not feeling well. So we are keeping you company. And as usual, for those of you new to the stream, we're here to answer any questions you have about Alexa. Well, not any. Most questions you have about Alexa. And
we'll try.
I shouldn't open that can of worms.
Yes.
Questions you have about Alexa, about skill development. We can talk about some things that announced at Alexa Live. And I actually, there's a couple of things that announced at Alexa Live that are really passion projects for me. So I'll probably steal some time to shamelessly talk about them. And, but also we can just, sit here, chat, have a good time. There are some questions we may not answer. And so just prefacing, we don't usually talk about roadmap. We don't talk about, confidential stuff. So if you ask and we tell you no, or we ignore you, just don't take it personally. I can't answer that. Oh, we already have a question in from Oxygen Box on Twitch. It says, I converted a skill to hosted following Amazon's online instructions and now testing. It's a really long question. Getting a handing off message.
Ooh, I saw this in the Slack a couple days ago. Oxygen Box, I think you asked it there as well.
So I do have an answer for this.
Oh, nice.
Yay.
The good news is that it has nothing to do with anything you did with your skill. Didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes, I'm not sure under what circumstances, Alexa might say handing off to, and that's a first-party feature to kind of distinguish for like an end user a response that's coming from Alexa versus a third-party skill. So you didn't do anything wrong. That's okay.
Yeah, so my first thought when I read that was about skill connections. And so for those not familiar with skill connections, it's a really great feature that has unlocked a lot of other features within Alexa. And one of the main points, though, of skill connections where we like to, tell you where you're going in the skill is that it does give the, handing off or this skill would like to hand you off to this other skill. Are you okay with that? And so skill connections tends to give that message. But you'll also get that message when Connections is handing off to, again, as Andrew mentioned, a 1P experience. So glad Andrew is here. That was a really quick answer. I think Ryan and I are both like, what?
No promises for all the future questions, sorry.
No promises. Well, no, you're here to answer all the questions while I just, have terrible dad jokes and Ryan keeps this ship floating.
Exactly.
Sometimes it does, sometimes Trade Last mentioned that sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Part that intrigues me. It's actually pretty consistent if it identifies that it's a 1P feature. It's more, did it identify that it's a, like, tell me the weather or something like that. Joseph, I'm going to put your name. Joseph on Facebook says he can't access his developer console account. That actually would be a scenario in which you would open a support case with our developer advocacy group. You can go to developer.amazon.com, and in the top right, you should be able to select your name and then do a support case, and that would be the best way to get your account unlocked. Unfortunately, we cannot unlock the account right now for you, but if you go through that process, you can get help.
They're smart enough not to give us that much power.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't have that power. Andrew might have that power, but only in the capacity of supporting someone. So
yeah, depends. I mean, if it is like a wrong password issue, then you would need to contact Amazon retail customer support. If there's something developer console specific going on, like maybe we're added to somebody else's account, we might be able to figure out what might have happened, but we will not have the power to like reset passwords. That's going to live with retail support. Only they have those keys.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely in any scenario, opening that support case will get you the quickest resolution. Angel's Kitchen on YouTube asks, do you have plans to add different voices for Alexa so users can choose between them? We did add a different voice. We now have the, what's the name of the male Alexa voice? I should know this. We do have two voices. We have the original Alexa voice, and then we have the new voice that we launched a couple weeks ago, and you can choose between those voices. Within the skill, the users, well, you could actually set it up where a user could choose their poly voice. I don't know how much benefit you would get out of that, but you could have them within your skill. You could say, hey, I can give you X, Y, and Z voice. Which one would you like? And you can start doing responses in that voice based on what they pick. But again, I don't think people care too much to choose their voices within a skill, but they can certainly pick their voices on Alexa itself. All right. Oh, there's questions. I don't know why. Do we always get questions this early? I feel like every stream I'm on, there's always like so many questions at the beginning. The Omnion on Twitch asks, I'm running an Alexa skill, and I'll show this one, from AWS Lambda. And for every skill, I need to upload some Python libraries for the environment. What is the best way to use a generic library environment for all skills I develop? This is a personal preference question. I'm going to let Ryan start, being he's an expert from AWS.
Ooh, be careful with that word. Yeah, so if this is an AWS hosted Lambda function, so this is not an Alexa hosted, if it's an AWS hosted, then I really love to use Lambda layers, which allow you to package up into a zip file a bunch of, in this case, Python, but it could be Node, it could be any sort of dependencies. And then every time you create a Lambda function, you add that Lambda layer in, and then you automatically pull in all of those dependencies. If it's an Alexa hosted, one of the things that I really, really like about the Alexa Lambda console, and I would love for AWS to do this exact same thing, is if you update it's requirements.txt in Python and save and deploy, it'll automatically pull in those Python libraries for you. So if they're hosted libraries that you can just pull in that way, you can use dependency management to get it. But if it's your own libraries, the best way to do that is AWS hosted and then do what's called a Lambda layer. And if you Google how to create a Lambda layer for Python, you'll find tons and tons of documentation about that. But it's just a zip file that contains all of your libraries. And the best part about Lambda layers is they can be your own libraries. They don't have to be packaged and hosted somewhere.
Great answer, Ryan. That's way better than the answer I was going to give. And for everybody who's been asking in chat about how do I get support, Andrew posted on Twitch, but I'm just going to share it here real quick. And it's our, oh no, I actually have this link. I don't even need to put it in here. No, I don't have this link. I am going to show it. So it's alexa.design/contact us. And I believe that'll take you to the same support I was talking about earlier. So any questions you have, like my account's locked, I need support, questions that you can't really get answered in Slack, that's the place to go. That's
Sorry,
fine.
Alexa started playing Frozen in my kids' room. It must have heard me, and so it was playing Let It Go. So I had to go turn that off. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out what you said that would have triggered Let It Go.
It was probably just the last song playing, and it just kicked off. So
this is a friendly reminder for everybody on this stream to mute your devices. If you aren't familiar with muting a device, there's a little icon on the top, the circle with a line through it. It will stop Alexa from hearing the wake word temporarily. Pro tip: when you're watching shows that refer to the device, when you are watching news that refers to the device, just keep it muted. Turn it on later. All right. Oxygen Box is now continuing this sing along that we're about to start. Except for I can't sing, so we're gonna nip that in the bud and move on. All right. Let's see. Did I miss anything else? No other questions.
Steve Nelson on YouTube was pointing out that there are premium voices too, like Melissa McCarthy and a couple others as well that are just kind of fun.
This is true. Also, we literally just this week launched a premium voice in India. And I believe, I believe he's a very famous actor. I recognize him. I just don't know his name very well. But we did launch a premium voice in India. Let's see. I'm gonna cheat and look it up. I'm not gonna murder that name. But if you are in India or you're using a device that's set to India, check that voice out. It's very exciting. I feel like I know who he is too. I was super excited to see a voice in another location. That's right. He's a famous actor. I've seen him in things. Okay, so that's thank you. Somebody actually shared the name, so you can check out his voice. I was very excited to see voices in other locales, especially because I actually have seen a few movies that he's been in. So I don't know. I felt cool for all of a minute. Anyways, all right. But yeah, so you can try out premium voices. You could create a voice synthesizer skill if you wanted. You could, or you can use Ziggy as Trade Last has reminded me. Ziggy is the male voice. All right, so we have a little bit of a lull here in questions, which I'm super excited about. So I think to get started, let's. I don't know how much we've talked about the developer advocacy group on the Twitch stream. I don't get to make it every single week. And then other weeks I'm just trying to invade chat and throw Jeff off. So purely non-altruistic. But I do want to talk about our developer advocacy group. I do want to talk about our developer advocacy group because they are kind of the backbone for getting support for developers. I think when people send off emails to support and they go into the ether, they just think some very helpful robot is probably responding to them, or they get an actual name and they realize it's a person. But Andrew, tell me a little bit about kind of the stuff that your team typically works on, or even my favorite, if you can share, what is the most challenging problem you've had to solve in your
role? Despite having been called a helpful robot in the past, I'm not. However, I can see where that misconception comes about. I don't know about most challenging. I've been doing this for a long time. There's a lot of instances, but how about a recent interesting one?
Interesting. And
okay.
How long have you been in the developer advocacy group?
On this team for about 5 years. I was the first person hired for Alexa support back in the days when Alexa was part of App Store.
Nice.
It's been a long time.
You've been at Alexa longer than me. That's just startling.
Yes, I even broke out my old shirt from, I believe, 2016.
Yeah, that's the old hackathon shirt. It was like the first shirt. Everybody tried to get it because none of us had shirts for Alexa yet. Anyways, most interesting problem.
Interesting recent problem. So we have these types, the skill type called flash briefing skills, which they're really meant for like sort of getting your content out there. It could be text, could be audio, and you create either a JSON or RSS feed that you point your skill to, and Alexa will read or play the content. We don't really have like a a single way for you to generate a valid feed. We have documentation on what a valid feed would look like. And because a lot of the people that are interested in this are more like content creators, there's been like some third-party services that came up to like help people make these feeds for them. So that's fine. A developer or content creator wrote in a few weeks ago about how their content just wasn't updating whenever they added their new audio file. And their feed looked valid, and it was only after they were able to write back at 2 different points, and I was able to generate 2 separate copies of their feed to compare 2 separate points in time that I noticed their feed's unique ID, which is supposed to unique identify each feed item, was the same between them. And also the timestamp was the timestamp at which I looked at the feed, not the time at which the content was updated. So the service provider they were using to generate this was making a valid piece of JSON, but it wasn't that the various key values weren't exactly correct or what we would expect. And after some back and forth, I was able to provide him that feedback. He was able to take that to the person he was using to generate this feed. They fixed it, and he was apparently very happy, which I'm happy about. When you write back to say thank you, I do enjoy that. I'm not telling you to, obviously, only if I helped out, but it means a lot.
Think your robot in the ether.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, that one was a little bit of a rabbit hole.
That's really interesting. So I actually didn't know that we integrated with third parties for this kind of stream integration. So I had built one essentially from scratch that used a raw RSS feed to pull in video files and find the latest. So it's actually, I may go rewrite what I did to use a third party service just to make life easier.
Maybe not this third party service.
Maybe not. Well, it sounds like it's
validate them a little.
Yeah,
closely.
it sounds like it's been fixed, but that's a good point, Ryan. Yeah, I have to go check that out. I didn't know we had that option, but it makes sense. We do have quite a few content creators on the platform, and it's a lot easier for them to do things this way instead of having to figure out how to do what I did, which is create a content streaming service.
Yeah, it's a different skill set, and not everyone has both.
Right. Mm-hmm. If only we had a streaming platform with which to, kind of use as a model for how to do these things. If only. All right. And so, Andrew, you've been with the team since the beginning, which is funny. We have actually crossed paths before, in the before times when there was an office, I think. Probably. But actually, I think you all are now sitting next to me in the office because they moved us all together. But, what is probably... what kind of problems or kind of tech within Alexa do you find the most exciting to work on? Like you see a problem come in for X feature and you're like, oh, this is going to be great.
Okay. So this is going to be great as this is going to be fun to solve.
Hopefully fun to solve, but I mean, if we're going for the humor aspect, you could also say this is going to be terrible.
No. Okay. So when people write in and say, hey, I'm working on this feature, I expect it to behave X way, but instead it behaves Y way. I do take it seriously, and I will try to reproduce the issue. I've probably created hundreds of skills for the express purpose of trying to reproduce someone's specific use case. And a lot of the time it will illustrate something that does need to be fixed, either documentation or a legitimate bug. I don't remember the specific scenario that led to this, but for a period of time, we had released the skill messaging API, not to be confused with the skill management API, two different SMAPIs. Apparently, we had released the skill messaging API documentation, but it was missing a key piece of information about like a permission scope. And without that, you couldn't actually get the feature to work.
Oh, no.
So like in that case, the product did work, but there was a gap in our documentation. And because someone took the time to write in and let me know, I was able to find what the problem was, and it is now solved. You can actually use the skill messaging API with our publicly facing documentation.
I love that. I mean, and that's actually a good point to make. Like, as nothing's perfect. I think the one thing is that when you get very close to a system, you tend to forget certain aspects of it
Absolutely.
that are crucial to beginning users. And that's something, I try and build my documentations and my examples kind of the first time I'm going through the end-to-end experience, so I can sit there and say like, hey, okay, I wouldn't have thought of that or thought of this. One prime example is actually the rich media and skill detail pages that we launched at or announced at Alexa Live. I was the second pass through on the technical documentation for that, and I just started pointing things out, saying like, oh, well, what does this do? How does this work? And they were like, oh, I guess I didn't think of that because I spend my entire day working with this feature, and so it just works.
Mhm.
And so if you are, it's a good point for everybody out there that's working on skills. If you notice misses or things in the documentation where you feel like, hey, if I had known this one piece of information, I could have saved X amount of time, like write in. Unfortunately, the channel is still Andrew's team, but they like to hear this feedback, and we can take that back to the team and reproduce and get the documentation updated, because it's there for you. It's there to make it easier for you to get through the features and get them integrated.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Ryan, we have not bullied you for 10 minutes, so now we're going to go back to you. You're new to this team. How long have you been with us now?
Like 7 or 8 weeks now.
7 or 8
like
weeks.
that.
Oh, I felt like it was much shorter than that. Well, then you're probably.
It's been going by really quick. So yes.
Yeah, summer was here and now it's gone. And so obviously you've been exposed to Alexa before this, you've worked with Alexa before this, but in comparison to Andrew and I, you are a spring chicken. So what in your experience are things that when you came into Alexa and started, really seriously working with the team, things that classic, if I had known this when I first started, or I wish I would have known this.
Yeah, and I better be careful, right, how I answer this. No, and this is actually kind of one of my first assignments is I'm documenting my experience as a developer who knew what Alexa was, had toyed with it, but now am doing it really seriously. And just my experience of just, of building skills now that are a lot more complicated than what I was building before. I've built a couple of skills, but they're, it's kind of trivial. And like I built one that tells me what temperature my chicken coop is, right? Like they're just kind of fun little skills. And one of the things that I've discovered is that we have a tremendous amount of content, but it's not always super discoverable, at least not by me. So I was going out and I'm like, why don't we have content for this? And then I would find like a week later, like this whole YouTube series on exactly what I was looking for. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is kind of document this experience and then kind of figure out a way to reduce developer friction of onboarding like we have really great documentation and marketing material and everything to say, here's why you should go build a skill. Here's why you should care about a skill. But once a developer is committed and saying, I'm going to go build a skill, that friction of getting from that point to having a working skill, I think that's what I would love. That's kind of one of my first assignments is to see if we can reduce that friction at all. And I have no idea what the answer to that is. If anyone has any ideas here, I'd love to hear them. Hit me up on Slack. I'd love to know what your onboarding experience is. And we have, thanks for putting the Slack community up there. And again, we have tons and tons and tons of amazing content. And maybe I'm just terrible at Googling, but to me, it wasn't all necessarily easily discoverable. We do have great assets like Cake Time and Pet Match. Those two tutorials are super, super helpful. And then the developer documentation is amazing, but that's like reading an encyclopedia. And so it's like, let's try and figure out how to, go after developers who are like, I'm trying to solve a problem. Like I remember one of the first things that I was going after was like, how do I get a slot value out of the request object? Like that to me, was friction and like just asking a question, like, am I supposed to be parsing this JSON structure? Am I supposed to be like assuming there's going to be, an index 0 in this array and so on, and just kind of like learning what the best practices are. So maybe I'm slow, but that's kind of my experience, and I'm trying to document it and put together like an action plan for next year to kind of help reduce that friction.
No, I think that's a great point. I also think, you know, even for things like the slots, everybody has their own method. So if you go to any of my GitHub repos, I have a very specific way I pull slots. But you could go talk to somebody else and they're like, no, I do it this way. And so I would say there's not even really a right answer. It's whatever answer
Right.
works for you. Also, my way comes from, so I joined Alexa in 2018, and we launched dynamic entities basically that year in you know, in beta. And so for the first time, we actually had two resolution types, and having to deal with what that meant for, you know, how we historically pooled slot values. So I would also say, you know, really it's wonderful to talk to people who are newer to Alexa, because you learn about the different ways they've adapted to the sheer amount of features that we have now. Certainly when I started, you know, 2018 was a year of a lot of features, monetization launched. But even before that, I was building skills in 2016 and 2017, and we had nothing. And so it was really easy to say, we didn't have nothing, but it was really easy to look at
Yeah.
the feature set. It was much smaller, and be able to go from there. But I agree. I think there's so much information that it's difficult for somebody who's been around a while, like Andrew or I, to say like, oh, this is the path you should take, because we just inherently know some of this stuff now. Also, I noticed that our GitHub repos have had a little bit of a shuffling in the last couple of months. You know anything
Yeah,
about
so
that?
that's another person on my team, Jeff's team, who's been working on revamping the GitHub repos. And so, like, I noticed the Alexa cookbook, which was kind of like your one-stop place to get all kinds of samples, has been deprecated and moved into a whole new, I guess, AWS organization or GitHub organization, AWS samples, or sorry, Alexa
Alexa sample.
samples.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of those that were in one giant repo have now been broken up into many, many, many repos. And so that contains just amazing amount of content. Not necessarily the most discoverable, but I think once you've learned how to like search through GitHub, you can find all kinds of answers to how do I do this? How do I do that?
And that's actually a great segue, because I did want to talk about the Alexa samples GitHub
Yay.
repo that we have. So if you, it is a relatively new repo, as Ryan has said. The cookbook has been replaced by something a little bit more. Here, I'll actually switch over to the full samples repo. Well, how would I do that? It's been placed with specifically samples. I think the thing with the cookbook is we had samples, we had snippets, we had all this kind of stuff, and it was a little bit hard to navigate. And so they've gone
Yeah.
through and cleaned up some of these samples and added more. And then literally today, I have uploaded and released a sample for shopping actions, which was announced at Alexa Live. The
Nice.
tech docs will be coming here soon. I just happened to move faster on the repo. And so you can apply for access to this program. I do not have the link handy. I will pull it up here in a minute. But you can apply for access, and this example will show you how to use both the add to cart and the buy product action within Node.js, and then you should expect a sample in Python in the coming weeks as well. But this is Alexa samples in general. It's a great spot for you to go in and get starter code for working with both features as well as Alexa. And you'll notice some of these look very familiar, like Node.js Trivia or the adventure game. These are the exact same templates that we use in the Alexa when you go to create a skill and you use the template when you get started. They are pulled from this repo. So you can start from here. You can start from working with creating a skill on the website. And I'm gonna.
Yeah. So what I do like about onboarding to Alexa is, you know, if you work best by watching videos, we have a great Zero to Hero and other, you know, YouTube video collections out there. We obviously have tons and tons of Twitch streams to go watch from the past. If you do better, more just, you know, working through something, we have great tutorials. And then if you just want to just dive into source code and just look at how to write Node.js and Python, we have that AWS, or I keep saying that, Alexa samples set of repositories, which have just pretty much everything you need to do with sample code there.
Got it. And so is there any sample that you would say was most helpful for you kind of getting started with this role?
I think so. That's a really good question. The two tutorials are what I used the most. I mean that Cake Time and Pet Match. cake time for just, building just a standard skill, I think it's a great place to start. And then Pet Match is more about working with Alexa conversations. Those have been really helpful. And then the sample code, like I created my own little index of like actual links to line numbers inside of the different repos. So I could have a reference of like, I found a really good helper function to go do this. And I basically just tagged it and saved a bookmark directly to that. So now I have like links where I can go and find sample code so I can just copy and paste it instead of fumbling around with my own.
That's really great. You
node.
should share that with the.
I intend to. I need to get it to a place or I need to put it someplace where I could share it. So.
And this actually kind of a bit of a segue. There's a little chat going on Twitch right now about how to do versioning with endpoints in dev and prod. And so A. Witters is, or I think it's A. Witters. Milton has asked, how to recommended setup for endpoints for skill versions. I use a prod alias for Lambda and a testing for development. I often create a separate testing skill with different invocations. Do I have to assign dev endpoint to testing while beta testing, then change it to prod each time? So this is, again, a personal preference. I use versions and aliases in Lambda, and you would want to create multiple aliases for both your dev and prod. And then essentially what you do is you would set dev to latest. As A. Witters has already been talking about within the chat, you set it to the latest version, and then when you need to go to publish, you would essentially save a version that would become the prod, and then you would switch latest. You're basically switching them back and forth. There's actually a really great article that's been around since I think 2017 or 2018, not written by us, that goes through Lambda versioning and aliases for Alexa skills. I highly recommend it. There are other methods you can use, but that's honestly the easiest one. And again, it doesn't involve you having to change the endpoint because the endpoint will be just an alias, but it just involves you. So you would have like a prod 1 and a prod 2, and then you just keep switching the versions on them as you go through dev insert. And I think Ryan may be pulling this up for me or someone with faster hands.
I was not. I apologize.
Oh, gosh.
I was trying to see if I could find it. I was not familiar with the documentation you're referring to, but it sounds great.
It is an article that was written in 2018. It's called Non-Breaking Lambda Deployments for Alexa Skills Using Versions and Aliases. It's on CodeCentric's blog. Actually, this is a different one, but this will work because they go through it. Again, not written by us, but I recommend it to everyone to read through that. It's in German, but the actual blog post is in English. Yeah, so go check that out. It'll walk through how to set up versions and aliases specifically for Alexa deployments, and all it really explains is a prod 1 and a prod 2 alias, and then just switching the versions around back and forth as you go around. And that's the way to do it without having to have two separate skills, because I agree it's a bit cumbersome to have both. A lot of people use two separate skills just because they like to keep a clean environment on one end, and they don't want to risk messing up their production deployments. Trayless asks, can you do a prod style versioning from the CLI, or do you need to do that from the Dev and Lambda consoles? You can set your endpoint alias from the CLI. That's what you can do that within the, I believe, both the skill.json and within the .ask folder, there will be another file that has the Lambda details as well as its revision ID. It will yell at you if you try to deploy it by changing it without updating the revision ID, but it also gives you the new revision ID, and so you can just paste it over. But that would be the way to do that from the CLI. Otherwise, the actual switching of the versions, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ryan, you can do that from the CLI as well within AWS. You can.
Yeah, the AWS CLI should have those.
I haven't done it from the CLI. It's just so easy to do it from the console. But I believe the AWS SDK or the CLI supports doing versioning from the CLI itself. Let's look at another one. So Little Defeat asks on Twitch, hello, is there a way to change Alexa's pronunciation of certain words? I'd like to say something like Steph, Ryan, and Andrew are live, but it pronounces lies at the word opposite of die. That's a really great question. There technically is a way to change pronunciation. It's within the phonetics, which is part of the SSML library that we have. I will actually pull that up because I have not used that in an age. But you can use that feature to change roughly how she says it. You will need to be familiar with how to type out phonetics. So you might need to do a little tutorial on that.
I think I found the doc there. The phoneme tag of SSML. And yes, you can do it, but you also need to know how phonetic alphabets work.
Exactly. So in the little tutorial on how to do that, or if you wanted to, you can kind of use die as an example. The reason a lot of people don't use the phoneme tag is because, again, I have a background in language and I couldn't linguistically tell you how to do that. But if you can find somebody to explain to you how to write the phonetic version, you can do that with the SSML tag. So it's a great question, and I will share Andrew's link, and it's just in the developer docs. If you use the search engine and just look up SSML Alexa, the first result is usually the Alexa SSML docs, hopefully. And then if you go to the phoneme tag, you can look up how to implement that. All right. Thank you, Andrew.
Of course, I've only done that for a couple one-off words that weren't quite pronounced right.
Right. We have I think Allison has been on this Twitch stream a couple of times. She worked on the cactus skill example. So Allison is our voice user interface designer. She's amazing. Whenever I have phonetic questions, I go to her because she's much more qualified to write them. So I get to be lazy and not learn how to write those out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Any other questions I missed? Milton's asking about the are you talking, Milton, just to clarify, are you talking about A/B testing the Alexa feature, or are you talking about just A/B testing in general? And we can get
It looks like he's talking about the new A/B testing feature.
Oh, yeah, I didn't scroll down far enough to see it. I wonder how the new A/B testing will impact your load balancing setup. So I can say, and we really should get the A/B testing team on here to talk a little bit more about the feature because it is pretty exciting. But the A/B testing is going to be based more on the versions of your skill. And so it will impact the endpoint because you'll essentially have, when you submit for certification, that is a version of the skill. It goes through certification, it goes live. If something goes wrong, you can roll back to a previous version, unless you changed X, Y, and Z things. And so usually people aren't eligible for rollback because they've changed too much. But you could roll back to a previous version. And so that's what AB will be using, is the versions of the skill. And so in that regard, you could actually have two different endpoints referenced. But that's my light overhead view of it. We should really bring the team on here to talk a little bit more about the A/B testing and specifically the impact on the endpoint. You might actually be able to change the endpoints that are referenced within the version. I have not actually seen the final version of A/B testing or what it looks like, but we'll talk to Jeff about getting that team to come on and talk about the feature a little bit more detail. Okay. Talk about versioning, multiple aliases, A/B testing. We talked about that. There's a panda. Milton is sharing the say as tag as an alternative for pronunciation. That's another great way to do it. Okay, I think we have another lull. So what questions can I badger Ryan with now?
I love how everyone helps answer questions too. Like, this is great. Takes the pressure off us to have.
Oh no, it's amazing. We have
amazing.
We have so many staples in chat, and they're all very nice, very, very welcoming to new people within this chat, I've learned. And it certainly saves quite a bit of time other than us like constantly answering questions, or as I tortured Jeff and started answering questions before they even showed up for him. So again, sometimes you all will see me in the chat answering questions, just so I can make these guys have to talk more. But yeah, we always appreciate your answers. We always appreciate your help. And again, feel free to join the Slack. There's a lot more dialogue that happens there in between the different office hours. And I will share it again, because it's a great resource. And then also on Thursdays, I believe Jeff will be back for Thursday. He does a chat with friends where he will bring in people, external developers, and talk about their development experiences, as well as bring in people from different teams. And it's I haven't actually been a part of that. I've just watched it, but it's another time where you can learn about the community and about what everybody's working on. Okay, round robin, favorite feature. Let's see. I can't talk about my favorite features that came out of Alexa Live because I am a bit biased. But Andrew,
Since you were one of the presenters at Alexa Live.
One of the presenters, rapid speed feature overview. But Andrew, did you're familiar with some of the newer features that have come out? Is there any feature that you've heard of recently that you're particularly intrigued by?
As far as I'm not sure what the timelines are on the features that have been released. I can't keep them straight in my head. I do have a feature that I want to make a skill with, but have been putting off for years. Does that count?
That counts.
Okay. No. It is the proactive events API, to send messages to people's endpoints. And what I want to do is build a general purpose trash collection skill. I had looked into some cities do have APIs. You can figure out what your trash schedule is, but not enough of them. So it would probably be easier to set up a skill where you can just tell the skill when, recycling or trash or compost is picked up, and then use that, say DynamoDB, to send you a message the night before to put out your trash. I think people would like that if I ever built it.
No, I think so I will say, somebody who's worked with proactive events from when it first came out, it's actually super easy to work with. And so really, I'm coming up with zero excuses for you to not have done this already. We should totally one day build that on stream, just the trash collection skill, and then we can get it done and you can work with the feature. It is a really great feature. I think a lot of people see it mostly in the way we've done it with the examples is, find out about this sporting event that's going to be coming in a couple of days, or learn about X, Y, and Z feature. The other great thing about proactive events is that you can kind of offline change the time. So if something goes wrong, maybe the trash is delayed, you could also create an event for that and tell people a different time. But I would like to see this get built, Andrew. So next time we have office hours together, there will be a test.
Okay. I know there is a schema for it.
I need the alert the next night to go get the trash can too. So if you could have an extra alert to say bring back the trash cans, that would be useful for me.
We've got a live user feedback session.
V2, perhaps.
Yeah.
I have
mine. Trash was yesterday, and my cans are still out by the street, so I need to go get them at some point today.
Who needs a reminder when you have a Twitch stream to remind you to go do something?
That's right.
How about you, Ryan? Is there any feature that you're particularly excited to work with?
I was really excited to see the new monetization stuff around the shopping actions and the Amazon Associates stuff. I think that what I really, really like about that is it answers a big community ask, which is hey, we want more ways to make money by producing these skills, and I think those are going to be great when they are fully launched. I'm trying to figure out how I can get on this too and start making recommendations. So
I would be happy to walk you through that. I may be a closet expert on that particular feature. So I would be happy.
I didn't just say that. I couldn't remember what session you were.
I was the monetization session.
Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, well, it was months ago, so who knows anymore. A. Witters is asking, regarding proactive events, I signed up for the predecessor notifications. Wow, that's really old. Submitting new skills using the notifications API, or will it get rejected in cert? So that's a great question. As Andrew says, we cannot guarantee that a skill will or not get rejected by certification. That is its own process. However, I do believe we have not deprecated fully the notifications API yet. We still have documentations on how to convert over. So give it a shot and see what happens. But I would highly recommend that you switch over to proactive events. Also, for those who may have noticed, we talked about this last time, display templates are also being kind of slowly sunset. And so you should see a very blaring message in your developer console to switch over to APL. If you haven't done it, but usually for something that serious, we kind of give a blaring message to let you know that you need to change it over. All right. Actually, this is really great. Again, shameless segue, because Alexa Shopping Actions is a project near and dear to my heart. And since Ryan is somewhat interested in working with it, I would love to spend a little bit of time telling you more. I'm glad you asked, Ryan. I'm glad I didn't, provoke this response out of you. Anyway, so it is very near and dear to my heart. It is a fantastic feature, mostly because I can talk about a little bit of the birth of the feature. And so, as you know, we have a lot of skills that do companion experiences. And one skill that I really enjoyed that has gone through some changes in the last couple of years is Saint Noir, which was a board game experience where Alexa was your narrator through the game. And it's kind of a murder mystery type experience where you had to guess, who the killer was and where they committed the murder and things like that. But one thing that was really key was that it was a board game experience, and so you needed the board game. And we tried to figure out several clever ways to get people who didn't have it, just ask them like, hey, do you have the board game? If not, we can do this intro experience. But the question was, how do we get them easily to get the board game? And from there, like, the idea was born. Why not just have skills be able to recommend items from Amazon, and so that they don't have to go through, asking Alexa directly or doing this or doing that. Like, we could just open this up, and so people who have these companion experiences who need additional physical items to be able to really enjoy the skill experience, it would be an easy way to get to that. And so that's kind of a watered down version of how Shopping Actions came to be for me. And so today, and I would say in the beginning, it was just, maybe we can just add to cart, and the team was amazing. And they were like, let's just do add to cart and buy product. Because some people don't like to have to be reminded to go to their Amazon cart. They want to be able to just get the item then and there. I know I'm the same way when my cat has the fanciest, snootiest cat food, and she will not eat anything else. And I cannot get a big enough supply. And so every couple of weeks I have to go on Amazon and reorder that item. But I don't have a consistent enough schedule to be able to put it on the subscribe and save schedule. And so I'm constantly like, if I put it in my cart, I'll forget about it for 3 weeks, and then she'll starve and hate me. The cat has never starved. No cats were harmed in the making of this film. But wouldn't it be nice to be able to just kind of go through and get the item directly? And so that's where it came from. And so I'm going to walk through a little bit, and we'll also keep an eye on questions.
By the way, for your cat food reordering, I have dogs. For our dog food, I got an Amazon Dash Smart Shelf, which you put the food on. Yeah, so I put the food on, and it constantly weighs it. And when it gets to a certain level of emptiness, it goes ahead and reorders me new dog food.
This is a thing?
So, this is a thing. It's awesome.
Like an actual product, or is this like a?
Yes.
I have seen it. It's a real thing.
Oh my gosh.
It's so cool. So cool. Really? Sorry to interrupt, but
no, this is valuable information from my.
Yes.
We have like dry food and wet food, and so I have to order both. And the dry food, because the other cat is less fussy, I always forget it. And so now I didn't, and I thought at first you were like, this is some smart home IoT hack that I'm going to have to spend a weekend doing. But if it's an actual product, like, that's amazing.
Yeah. You can put a container on there and like tear the weight so it knows how much the container weighs. It's changed my life. So.
Those geniuses over in retail. Gosh, those guys. Yes. So good. So good. I love it.
It's a Dash Smart Shelf is what it's called.
Yes, Milton, I forgot. The display templates are gone as of August 30th, so it's not slowly anymore. You should probably get your display templates updated now. I was trying to soften the message,
The blow.
but thanks for calling me out. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about shopping. Back to this lovely repo because it's the best example I have to show you. And so I've actually separated it out where the things that you need to really understand shopping are in shopping. And so there's actually, if you watched Alexa Live, we had a yoga demo. And this is the skill that ran that particular demo. Cleaned up a little bit, obviously, because when you're building demos, nothing ever looks nice. But cleaned it up a little bit, moved from there. And so basically, how shopping actions works is that you have two actions you can choose from: add to cart. Exactly what it sounds like. You suggest an item, and then Alexa takes over and confirms with the customer that they want to add the item to their cart, or the buy product action. And again, same thing. Alexa takes over after you suggest the item and says, here's the item details. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's the shipping, and would you like to buy it? And then it will create an order within their Amazon account. Customers at any given time can go to Amazon, the Amazon retail website, and cancel their order or modify it. That is done outside of the skill, but also if maybe you order an item, you exit the skill, you come back later, and you're like, I didn't really want that item. You can still say, Alexa, cancel my last order, or cancel that. And she will confirm that you want to cancel that last order and cancel the item. So it acts very similar to when you just say, Alexa, add toothpaste to my shopping cart. However, right now you don't get that kind of list of items. You're just specifying a very specific item. And so how do you specify it? Well, you'll read this in the technical documentation, but I am walking technical documentation for Alexa shopping actions, so I'm just going to explain it. But when you decide you want to promote or recommend an item for your skill experience, I will turn the font size bigger in a little bit. When you want to recommend an item for a skill experience, you can go to the Amazon website for your particular marketplace, and this is going to be marketplace specific. And so for me, I can go to Amazon.com. And maybe I want a yoga mat. And I'll pick this first one because it's here. And so when I decide that for my yoga skill, people just starting out to yoga, honestly, it may seem you take it for granted, but a lot of people will spend time looking up, what do I need to do yoga? Do I need a mat? Do I need blocks? Do I need a strap? Do I need one of those non-slip grippy mat thingies? During the pandemic lockdown period, it was impossible to find free weights, and so I'm looking up how can I do things without free weights. Turns out textbooks from my old college days make for really great just free weights moving around. Pro tip. But what I would do is I would go here and I would find the item that I think is most appropriate for my customers, and in this case it'll be yoga mat, and then I just need to pull the Amazon product identifier. We call it an ASIN. And you can find the ASIN up here in the URL after the /DP. You can also find it down in the product details down here. So it'll say product details, it'll say ASIN, and they're down here. You can pick either. Actually, these are two different ASINs. Look at that. You could pull either one. I usually pull the one that's in the URL because it's more accurate for my location. But you can pull either ASIN. And then once I know what the ASIN is, I need to just store it somewhere in my skill. For my cases, I like to keep things in this kind of list of items because I'm going to actually have multiple locales. And so what you'll notice here is the ASINs for the US and for the UK are different. The reason being, sometimes certain items that are available in the US, as you may know, are not available in like Amazon.co.uk or in Amazon.in. And so you need to find a similar item that you can suggest for the customers in the other marketplaces that you support. And Alexa Shopping Actions is done by Marketplace. So a marketplace is just a Amazon retail website that serves an entire area. So the UK actually serves customers in a lot of locations. But we also have, we have a website for India. We have a website for Japan. And so you just go to each of those and depending on which languages you serve and which marketplaces, and pick an ASIN. So here I actually have two items. I have yoga blocks and yoga mats, and I have picked items for both. I have the title in here because I'm actually, changing up the items in my example, but you wouldn't necessarily need the title if you have your language strings done a different way. So I have an ASIN. That's kind of the second step. The other step you'll notice when you go to start to integrate is you actually need to update your manifest. So once you get confirmation that you have access to the feature, you would go in and you would update your skill manifest. And note that it uses shopping actions. This can only be done right now from the manifest. It cannot be done from the developer console. Just a quick note there. Eventually, we'll be able to do it from the developer console. Fabio asks on YouTube, can I build a skill about wine, some wine news, bottle of wine, and show advertising to consumers and sell ads to wine companies? So you can't sell alcohol in a skill. That's actually in part of the policy. If you go look it up for skill certification, you can't actually sell alcohol within a skill. You could build a skill about wine facts, and about wine information. We have skills out there about whiskey. They are mature rated, so your skill will be rated mature. That just gives a content warning to any users that enable it. This is to ensure that, people who don't necessarily want to be exposed to content like that are accidentally enable it and are like, oh gosh, what's happening here? So I would recommend, as you're exploring a wine skill, to go look at the policy requirements for skills around alcohol and mature content. And Milton has shared the link to the policy of alcohol and mature content as part of an answer to another question. But Milton's link here. There's a long, this is in response to somebody else, but we do have the policy testing for an Alexa skill. This is a great resource if you're looking at content that you're not quite sure about. This is a good place to kind of verify that. So anyways, back to this. We have enabled shopping. We're going in. I have to do this in 5 minutes. And so all I've done is I've grabbed an ASIN. And then what I want to do is you build the skill interaction exactly like you would for a skill that uses in-skill purchasing. So one thing is that you do need to get consent from the user before you kind of shove them into a shopping experience. And so one thing I like to say is, like in the example that we showed at Alexa Live, it was, asking them if they had a easy or difficult stretch in their yoga practice. And from there, if they said it was difficult, offering items to help. In this case, maybe yoga blocks if they're trying to reach for something. And I would say, hey, I think yoga blocks can help with that. Would you like to learn how you can, get this product from Amazon? And they would say yes, or they would say no. If they say no, I go back to the skill. But if they say yes, what I then do is I generate a directive to Alexa Shopping Actions. And Alexa Shopping Actions uses the same skills connections feature that I was talking about earlier, where you will actually hand off all the functionality to Alexa to take care of. That means getting, consent to buy, talking about the item, processing the payment if need be, and doing the shipping. That's all handled by Alexa. The only thing your skill handles is getting that initial consent and providing the ASIN that should be recommended to the user. And so in this case, you can see a start connection request. It's going to the Amazon add to shopping cart endpoint. And I have provided, it's going through my array, but I have provided essentially one ASIN. And the first question I always get is, wow, this product thing looks like an array. Can I support multiple items? The answer is eventually. Today, we only support handing off one item, but it is built like that with the intention of we'd like to support multiple items. What may happen in this case is that we will only support add to cart for multiple items. As you can understand, imagine having somebody have to sit through 5 items and learning about how much they cost, what the name of them is, and the shipping. See, Ryan understands. It's too much dialogue, but you could add to cart. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, that's I think that makes a lot of sense. I think at that point, the experience of checking out with the app or Amazon.com would make a lot more sense.
It does, and it's a prime example of what I think would be a really great use case for this, and a feature that is, kind of something that is needed is I have a skill, maybe it's a crafting skill, or I have a recipe skill, and I have, for the recipe, I need all these items from Prime Fresh. And so today we currently don't support Prime Fresh as well, but because of the logistics behind it, there's some extra steps you have to take. But in an ideal scenario, we would support Prime Fresh, and you would be able to add all the ingredients to your cart for like a week's worth of meals. Maybe it's a meal planning app, and it would then, schedule the delivery and get it done with. Like, that would be amazing for me, but that would require me adding multiple items at once. And that's kind of where we're headed, is the ability to those experiences. All right. So yeah, so I've done this, and I have this token at the bottom. The token is just a way for me to identify this transaction when it returns. Anybody who's worked with something that uses skill connections will recognize that identifier. Then it acts very similar again to a monetization request. I send that off. The customer disappears into the ether and tells Alexa whether or not they want to buy the item or add it to cart, and then comes back and Alexa tells me a few details about the transaction. So, I saw a meme about this the other day, but the way this works is if everything went okay, meaning there wasn't an issue with shopping itself, it'll return a 200 status code. But then within that status code, there may be some additional information that indicated the level of success or failure at the customer level. But if something goes wrong with shopping, maybe there's an error, disconnect, it'll return the 500 error, and then you would handle it as an error from there. And that's what I've done in this example. So hopefully they've said yes to adding to cart. I get the 200 back, and then I will respond, hey, great, glad to know you like that item. And then in this case, because they've already purchased it, I maybe want to store some information in my own backend indicating they've already purchased this item. Nothing is worse than somebody constantly recommending to me, an item I've already purchased. So you do want to make sure that you're storing information, if it was a success, and it's an item that is not a consumable, so not something that somebody might use quickly, then you want to indicate to yourself, hey, maybe I shouldn't ask them to buy this again, or maybe I shouldn't tell them they need this again. I only need so many yoga mats. I have 2. That's it. I don't need any more. I only need so many motorcycle helmets, for example. Actually, I could use more of those, I think. Yeah. But you just want to make sure that you're not kind of inundating them with requests. And then you go back to the normal skill functionality. And that's basically shopping in a nutshell. And what I've tried to do with this example is make it a little bit easier to get you up and running with the feature if you get access. And we are at time. So I've talked too much about shopping. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in chat. Again, we will be releasing the tech docs for that particular feature here soon. And you can also request access from the Alexa Live information. There are several access links. I do not believe I have a link here, but I will post it in the Slack for those who do not have it. Otherwise, any last lingering comments from Andrew or Ryan before we close out?
Not here.
No.
And
I think we may have to just boot Jeff out of this altogether and take over. So.
No, nice. Jeff's great. I like lingering in the chat. Then nobody has to. I don't have to do my hair in the morning. It's fine. So I didn't do my hair this morning, just in case anybody was wondering, which you weren't, but I told you anyways. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan and Andrew. And as of course, you're going to see a lot more of Ryan because he is, as he's self-proclaimed, Jeff Jr., which is a really weird mental image for me. In training, Jeff in training. Well, at first you said Jeff in training, and I literally thought Jeff Bezos, and so I was terribly confused for a second. But
no, not that Jeff. Sorry.
Not that Jeff. Another Jeff. But we are, Jeff B should be back this Thursday to chat with you all. And if anything, he will definitely be back next Tuesday. And you might see me lingering in the chat on Tuesday next week as well on Twitch. So come and hang out, ask us your questions. And as always, have fun building and come talk to us on Slack. But otherwise, have a great day, everybody. And thanks for joining us for office hours.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.